Jerome C. Harris is the interim president and chief executive officer of the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. Good to see you, Jerry.
Good to be here.
Jerry, welcome.
A little bit later on, we're going to talk about the bigger picture involving police and minority relations. Ferguson, New York City, Newark, and across this country right now. The issue as it relates to bail reform, so-called bail reform, pre-trial release. What is the issue and how does it disproportionately affect the minority community?
The current system of money bail, rather than a system which permits for risk assessment and an analysis, results in people being locked up for long periods of time, not having been brought to trial, simply because they can't afford bail.
Can't afford to get out.
And that's an issue. So it has a disparate impact on low-income urban people and people of color. At the other end, there's a large consideration and concern for those individuals who are dangerous, but who may have access to money to get out. So therefore, the proposed constitutional amendment, which creates pretrial detention, guarantees and defines speedy trial, and creates this risk assessment component, is very important.
This is an important thing for New Jerseyans to understand, because it's not enough to say, hey, listen, just keep them in there. They're dangerous. Okay, you have to look at every individual case, every individual person who is charged, and look at their potential situation. Correct?
Certainly. The Institute for Social Justice and the work that we do actually have a number of clients who, in fact, have been incarcerated, found ultimately not guilty, having spent large periods of time in jail, but also racked up tremendous fees with bonds, bail bonds.
And then they lost their jobs.
And they lose their jobs. So multiply that by a number of people. That's why real people need to understand that this reform is necessary.
You called it, I think you've called it a contemporary debtor's prison. What, a pretrial debtor's prison, because people are just put in jail, and they're there because they can't afford to get out.
And we wind up as taxpayers paying money to for them to be in jail, whether they're guilty or not. All right, and ultimately it's a disinvestment.
And Jerry, why does this have to be a constitutional change? Why can't they just
pass a statute legislatively?
Yeah. Well, the New Jersey Constitution has a guarantee for money bail written into the Constitution. This constitutional amendment eliminates that requirement, replaces it with the ability to have pretrial detention. That's why it's necessary.
One last question is, a judge right now in New Jersey cannot deny bail to somebody despite the crime that they've committed?
And actually no. Wow. What happens is a judge can make an assessment and try to establish a level of bail that is excessive or high, but each individual has a right to bail.
Wow. Joe, let's just shift gears, because the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice is a terrific organization, does important work for people who otherwise would not have someone caring about their situation, seeking justice, right? So let's talk about police-minority relations. We come at this as we move into the fall of 2014. Ferguson, Staten Island, New York City, Newark, New Jersey, with the federal monitor coming in. First time a New Jersey municipality has had that case where federal government has come in. What would you describe as the state of police-minority relations in urban communities?
I think it varies, but right now across this country, as you see from the reactions all over the country, people are saying the relationships between the police and our community are sufficiently tense that a light match might go off and we can have an explosion. Unfortunately, we do not see the kind of investment in community policing.
Define what that means for people who don't know.
The notion that the approach to deploying police and their interaction with the police, a partnership between the police who are responsible for being in our streets, working with community to establish where the priorities are, how do we respond, almost going back to the days of the neighborhood policeman. The reality is that we have, and we're talking a lot about Ferguson around the militarization, the fact that local police forces have been given anti-terror
When that comes in, does that help? When cops come in dressed in that way, with that artillery, before anything has happened, what message do you believe it sends to the minority community?
In the absence of police-community relations as a foundation, all right, if both the police and the residents of the community recognize that there is a terroristic danger or a real threat, it may be appropriate to bring...
How about if there's no terroristic danger?
If there's no terroristic danger, and that terroristic danger could be defined as threats people to person who live in that community, as opposed to stuff that's external, yeah, there needs to be that communication. Absent, if you have militarization, all right, and no community policing, no relationship, you have a formula for explosion.
And Jerry, why do you think, you talked about lighting a match and the explosion, why do you think it was Ferguson, Missouri, where the match was lit and the explosion happened and the spotlight from the country was on it?
I think what you have in Ferguson is an interesting mix of 73% population, very few elected officials.
Well, go back. 73% of the population is
African American.
And the police force is disproportionately white.
Entirely white.
And the elected.
And one elected official in the community.
And therefore, when something like this happens with Michael Brown in the street, and the case will play itself out, and we respect the process, and we hope it plays out the right way. But when something like that happens, and that young man was in fact in the street for 4 hours, that's not debatable after he was shot and killed. What happens in that situation in terms of the reaction of most people of color?
The notion that the government is non-responsive, alienated, and we are being oppressed, and in fact, people who are supposed to be protecting us and having our community make safe are in fact attacking us, and reflective of an era previously when police and law enforcement could legally, in fact, discriminate and act physically against
Jerry,
people
could you
of color.
understand also the position of police officers who feel perplexed that they are also seen as potential targets here, that folks don't really understand that they see themselves as the last line of defense in protecting the same communities that you are talking about, who are maybe hating them and distrusting them?
Steve, in my career, I've had the opportunity to serve as an acting public safety director. I've had police officers killed on duty, all right? So I understand both sides of it, all right? And the fact is that there are two sides, all right? And the community, I think, understands that there is a real threat to life and danger and a responsibility that goes along with the authority of being a police officer.
Right.
And sometimes not enough energy has been placed into developing the relationship. I go back to the relationship.
Before anything happens.
Before anything happens is critical. The difference between, for example, responses community by community may be, is there a relationship between the police force and the community or not?
Jerry Harris is the interim president and CEO of New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. Jerry, don't let this be the last time you join us.
Look forward to coming back.
Jerry, thank you so much. Thanks so much. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation about police-minority relations with Udi Offer, the executive director of the American Civil Liberties Union in New Jersey. Don't go away. Thank you, Jerry.